Hello everyone, I am Damini, your host for today, and today I have with me one of the very special guests for whom I actually waited for I think 4 to 5 months, who is none other than Mr. Varun Pathak, who is the counsel at Chatul Amritsar Mangaldas. Thank you so much, sir, for accepting my invitation and sparing your time, especially during your vacations. Thank you so much, sir.
Hi, Damni. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, sir. So, without taking your much time, I would really like to ask you that you graduated from a non NLU college. So, would you like to share your journey from being a non NLU student, or what sort of challenges you had when you were in law school? Or we can really say that you did not face any sort of challenge with regards to the disparity between the NLU and non NLU, or is it only prevalent now?
See, I really don't know how to answer that because I would have the context of being an experience of being from a non-NLU college. But for whatever little I understand, that perception ultimately it's there for some people, but I don't think that's something which will stop you from achieving your dreams. Every college, be it NLU or non-NLU, the students face similar challenges. And ultimately, it's about competing against yourself and becoming better at what you want to achieve. And if you apply your mind to your dreams and to your goals and to your aspirations, you will eventually reach where you want to be.
But sir, talking about law school journey or something like that, when people graduate from law school, they really want a good job in hand. So what do you want to say about like what are the challenges that every individual face during the initial years of the professional life? So what are those challenges, sir?
One of the early challenges which I also faced was that as a student, when you're starting out, especially after your 12th, one of the things that we generally do is we take it easy. We take it easy because we are just out of school and we think we have time. So this is something that I learned subsequently once I started my profession. It helps if you are focused, if you have identified what you want to do. And if your goals are clear, it becomes easier for you to work towards them. So going forward, for once you decide that you want to be a lawyer, it is advisable for anyone wanting a career in law that they should clearly demarcate what their preferences are. When I say preferences, I mean the area of practice that they want to target. See, if you start out as a lawyer, a lot of it is serendipity, a lot of it is luck and the opportunities that you get. Now, one of the things that we typically hope when we're getting out is a good payback. Now, you may have two offers, assuming that you have two offers. You may have two offers, but the area of practice may not be what you want, but you may go for money. So this is again something which is based on luck. So my suggestion is that you should always go for the area of practice that you want to practice in, identify it and work towards it. Money, as for me, is a byproduct. Money will follow. If you're good at what you do, it will eventually take care of itself. So focus on your skill set, focus on what you want to do, and then work towards it. So if you want to practice corporate law, please be by all means, but then build up your profile, build up your skill set, work towards being a corporate lawyer. If you want to be a litigator, then again, the same principles apply. Uh, Work hard, work on your skill set, and work towards being a good litigator. It's a never ending process. You will continue learning till the day you die or you are in the profession. The day you stop learning, it's often said that the day you stop learning is when you actually become redundant, and which is actually true. So you are as good as your last performance, be it corporate or litigation. So please work hard on your skill set. That's very important.
But sir, we have seen your profile on LinkedIn. That's really very fascinating. That you were into academics, you were into corporate, you were into litigation, you were in independent counsel as well. So, sir, we would really like to know, based on your experience, like what do you feel that what are the important skills that every lawyer should possess?
See, like I said, I decided on a lot of things. I was not clear. I was not focused initially. And I also had my share of fun. So I decided to pursue my master's sometime in the third year. And I started working towards it. I did a few moot courts. I also was part of the team which went to Stetson's. And then I started working on my profile and focusing on my master's, my grades, everything. So once I did my master's, my topic was my initial urge, like everyone else at that point of time, was to look for a good payback and start with corporate law. So I started with corporate law. That was the idea. And once I started it, I realized that I preferred litigation more. I'd done some litigation internships. So for me, that clarity came in much earlier in the profession. But it's something that I tried. I did transactions. Even after I started doing litigation, I did some advisory and transactional work as well, because it was part of my dispute profile that I was doing work for a client and they wanted some expertise in my area. So I was part of those transactions as well. So for me, that clarity came in because I was clear in what I did not want to do. And because I liked litigation, so then I started experimenting. I joined Mr. Chandyok, but in the seniors chamber, it was a very good, it was one of the best experiences that helped me shape into who I am. It gave me the basics and helped me with a lot of nitty-gritties of litigation. Then I realized that in a seniors chambers, my arguing opportunities would be limited and I would only be able to assist Mr. Chandyok. So I wanted to join a chamber or a firm where I could get arguing opportunities, which is where I joined Paras Kohat. My partner there was Mr. Ravi Prakash. He himself is a litigator. And with him, I got good opportunities to argue. And then when he shifted from Paras Kohat to DSK, I moved with him. So I was with him at Paras Kohat for a year, and then thereafter for 6 years at DSK. It was a good time. So I argued a lot of my matters, and I learned and worked on my skill set there.
But sir, you said that after law school you went for masters, right? But talking about this aspect only, because we have variety of students in law school. Everyone have their own sort of mindset when they enter law school. Like some people have in mind financial stability after those 5 years of hard work. Plus, some or the other people would really like to go for their passion only, and they are ready to struggle more. So, sir, what aspect you had in your mind? Was it only financial stability or something you always wanted to go for?
See, for me, my entry into the profession also coincided with the credit crunch. So that kind of dried up the opportunities when I was there. So at LSE, I gave interviews for Allen and Overy, and I made it to the last round. But at that point of time, they were not taking anyone. And when I joined Krishnamurthy company as well in Mumbai, it was through a recommendation. My friend had worked with Naina Krishnamurthy then. So we gave an interview much before these Zoom calls and teleconferences, the tele interviews were the norm. So Naina offered me a job over call. And after I completed my master's, I went and joined the Mumbai office. She had moved to Mumbai. She was setting up the office there. So at that point of time, there were limited opportunities as well. So it ultimately comes down to the market. Like today, the market, because of the COVID pandemic, the opportunities are limited, and you can't be too picky and choosy in what you want to start with. You should start and then find your way around. So it comes down to what your personal aspirations are. So if you want to do litigation, my suggestion is then you should keep striving for being a good litigator. And if you want to do corporate, please take all possible steps to achieve your dreams. For some, it may happen immediately and instantaneously. For others, it may take some time. but never give up. So it's not a 100-meter dash. And just as an example, I have given this example many times to my colleagues and my juniors as well, that the profession that we are in, a 5-year or 10-year difference does not make is not detrimental to what you eventually do. So I've known people who've had 30 years of experience, and people who have had 50 years or 40 years. In a court, you are an equal. Also in a transaction, when you are leading, you are doing the best for your client. So just from my own example, one of my early transactions, I was representing a client, and in that transaction didn't go through completely. The reason was that there was a big four accounting firm. They had done a financial due diligence, and there was something, it was concerning some SEBI approval and RBI approvals. Some money had come in from the parent company which had not been picked up, and there were regulatory approvals required, which I picked up. And I was just a novice. I was just out, 3 months or 4 months into the profession. I picked it up, I highlighted it, and it was part of my due diligence. And because of that, the transaction fell through. Because the investors then got wary, because it was a huge regulatory gap. So it's not what you have done in the past, but what you bring to the table at that point of time. You may have been brilliant, but if you are not up to the job at that point of time, you're not doing the best for your client, it doesn't make any difference. So
But sir, like this COVID pandemic came with a lot of tragedies and traumas for some and had put everything on hold. So I would really like to discuss this with you, that there are few people who are really worried and they're actually very much scared that they don't want to go independent now. They don't want to become an independent counsel now. So what do you say about this?
see, it's right now the market is tough. It's been for individual advocates, it's been very difficult, because for 2 years the risk appetite and litigation appetite has gone down. Firms have done well. Many firms have done well, but for individual advocates, it's been difficult. And you have to assess what is good for yourself, what your resources are, what this infrastructure do you have. You are, if you're going to practice law, you're not it's not like I said, it's not a 100-meter dash, it's a marathon. So you can always go independent if that's what your dream is. You can always do it after 2 years or 5 years, but because ultimately your job is to work on your skill set, make a name for yourself, and be a top lawyer. That you can do being in a firm as well. So you have to see what works best for you.
But sir, not only talking about the lawyers, but like we have seen a lot of law students found this pandemic as a golden opportunity to just fill up their resumes with all sort of activities they did during this pandemic. So do you really think that these activities will help them achieving something, or these sort of activities really doesn't matter if you just fill it up in your resumes?
See, nothing that you do ever goes waste. Every learning is important and is uh, is necessary. It will make you who you really are. If it enhances your skill set, then please, you should carry on and do whatever you think is best for you. Like I said, it's individual. Some people will do it, some people will not. Like I some s- when I started out, so I started practice of reading areas of and reading books in certain areas of interest. So you have to work on yourself. You have to find what is of interest to you, and how do you think that it will best add to your skill set. If you are able to do that, and if you think that it works, then do whatever is necessary. The only caveat there is that you'll have to have some sort of a measuring mechanism where you can measure what you have done and whether it's actually helpful. There is no point being delusional about it and going on and doing something which actually doesn't help you out. So there has to be a measuring mechanism. You can judge yourself against yourself or against other people when you actually put your skill set into test.
But so taking into consideration the other side of our professional life, is that we have seen a lot of gap talking about the accessibility of internships for non-NLU students, which we actually saw during the pandemic itself, because a lot of law students came very active on LinkedIn and they started sharing their experiences. So what do you think about this gap in, accessibility of internship for non-NLU law students? Plus, like, do you really help those students who are from non-NLU, which actually, they deserve some sort of internships at good firms?
See, I'll tell you something that maybe this bias could be there, but I'll not go into the reasons for that bias or whether that bias is there. I'll neither confirm or deny whether that bias is there or not, but I'll just give a few tips. So, and I'll again talk from my experience. In the third year, again, I thought that you have to do internships. For some reason, I thought I should do an internship in US. So I applied to, I took out the directory and applied to all firms in California and New York. And I got a postal reject from each one of them. Now, one of the things at LSE, which we were then taught, was that it's not the volume which helps. And this is typical that I also see. People will just add me on LinkedIn and they'll say that I really deserve this opportunity. And this has been a dream of mine. I want to work at this firm, X firm or Y firm. Now, one of the basics that we were taught was that when you are writing an application, the first thing you should do is that at least do your basic homework. Don't go for volume, go for quality. Because each candidate who's out there, and this is what you'll do for your master's application as well, each one of them will say that they are the best. Now, if I have to decipher that whether you are the best or not, one of the things I will see, because I have nothing before me to know who you are, I will only go by what you have written. Now, if you write to me, at least do the basic homework, whether I'm a man or a woman. So people write dear sir / madam. That is a complete no-no. And if you, when you're applying for internships, please read up on basics of applying. What are the things that you must do, what your covering letter should have, what your CV should have. And it's possible that kids at NLUs, they are taught these things. So sometimes there's a gap in people understanding and appreciating how important it is, because lawyers are typically busy and they will not have that much time to go into detail as to what your actual achievements are. They will go by, to a certain extent, superficially on form, uh, and thereafter content, because you will only eat something if you like it. It's rare that you will eat something that you don't, it is not visually appealing. The same is true for applications as well. And I'm sure if candidates are there and if they apply, you do get a response. And I'm saying this from personal experience, even though I was not from a NLU. If my application was decently written, I always got a response. And many times, and in my career, when the opportunities that I got, I come from a non-legal background. I got many interviews based on the applications that I shared, the application emails that I wrote. So it's not always that people will not respond or you will not get opportunities, but you have to put in that effort.
But sir, talking about the students who are in particularly 4th and 5th year of their law school, so they try very hard to get PPOs from the law firms. So what are the key points they really need to take into consideration while expecting a PPO from a firm?
See, first thing is you need to be clear in what you want. That is very, very important. And second is that you should also be clear that not everyone will get a PPO. So the easiest way for anyone who's recruiting, and this is something that even I look for in my juniors, is that how diligent are you when you are making that application. So one of the things that stands out is if you have good grades, that shows that you have applied your mind and you have done something right. But there are other skills as well that we look at whether you're hardworking or how confident you are, and how do you get out of a tight situation. So all those things are there. So if you're focusing on a PPO, and generally what happens is if you've done internships at a particular place, um, they get converted into pre-placement offers. So it helps if you've been diligent, if you've been focused, and if you're lucky enough after having worked hard, you to have gotten it. Very very good. You are on the right path. But if you do not get it, don't be disheartened. You can start today and be you start working on your skill set, and then go forward. I'm sure you will get what you want eventually.
Yes, sir. So, sir, that was I must say, knowledgeful discussion with you. But to be on a more positive side of this conversation and to end this on a very, very positive note, so what are your recommendations? What are your suggestions for all the viewers who's going to watch this video that they really need to think before doing something, whether they are just applying for master's application, whether they are just applying for an internship, or whatsoever they are doing in their law school?
So for people who are applying for their masters, one of the things that they should keep in mind is that the person who's reading your recommendation and your letter of purpose, it's a job for them. They do it day in and day out, and they would have read hundreds, if not thousands of applications, and they'll be doing it. So you have to make it interesting. You are not there. So this is what you write on your paper, and what your recommendation is how they will judge what your personality is. So remember, everyone is always very good. No one will say that I'm bad. But if you put a human picture, you put a human story out there, you give what your motivations are, and from tangible experiences, you paint a good picture of yourself, where and also show your shortcomings and how you worked on them. It works out for you. That's one aspect. Secondly, you should identify, don't go for bulk universities, in the sense, don't go for more than 4 or 5, maximum 6 universities. Do your homework, understand what their requirements are. Some universities are focused more on the academic side of things, whereas others are focused on a well-rounded profile. So if you do your homework, if your recommendations are good, your grades are good, and your statement of purpose is good, you will you will get through to your college of your dreams. And once you're there, please focus on the next aspect, whether you want to work abroad or you want to come back. Always try and be 2 steps ahead of where you are. So that will help you. As far as the profession is concerned, please, just a general recommendation, knowledge of law and general reading appetite is very very important if you want to practice, if you want to be successful. So uh, please read whatever your area of interest is. It helps in having conversations. It also is helpful when you are there in court, be it on or when you are doing transactions. So knowledge of law is very very important, so work on that skill set. And thirdly, again very important, people don't focus on it. It's important to know your language. Please, please work on the grammar side of things. Please, how you work on how you can say things more sharply, more succinctly, more clearly. It's not verbosity. It's not the big words which are important, but saying things simply and in a way which is more understandable, which is less complicated, is very very important. So you should work on your language skills as well.
I must say that was indeed a good sort of a discussion with you, sir. And thank you so much for the suggestions. And I hope the viewers who's going to watch this video, they'll surely take into consideration such suggestions. And sir, can I say that you're easily available on LinkedIn so that viewers who want to connect with you, they can connect with you on LinkedIn?
I do, ma'am. I always respond, if not on the same day, but I do respond. But my difficulty is, and this is my inability in a sense, that if 100 people come to me and say that I want an internship, it's not possible for me to get them an internship. One, because I don't know them. They may be very deserving of candidates. But if that hundreds of people, I cannot bypass the process. So they'll have to go through the regular HR process and apply for internships. And if they don't hear from them, then I really am not in a position to expedite or facilitate their internships. So anything other than that, general guidance or any other help, I'm always there. But in terms of internship, when I was doing my own practice, yes, it was different. I did help out a few people, but now it's difficult because the firm has its own processes. It's not possible for me to recommend people for internships.
Yes, sir. So I think viewers have got an idea as to what sort of stuff you really need to talk about when you are actually connecting with Sir on LinkedIn. And I'll share the link with all of the viewers in the YouTube itself if they just want to connect with you on LinkedIn. So thank you so much, sir, once again for accepting my invitation and sparing your time during your vacation time. Thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure, Damini. Thank you so much.